All right now. So everyone, we are back. Let me check the chat. Stuff looks good there. I'm gonna check. Well, I'm just gonna assume I'm not gonna waste too much time. I was gonna check on YouTube to see. Oh, I kicked the camera a couple times there. Okay, let's see. All right, cool. So I think we're good. It's a little weird. I haven't streamed in, gosh, if you guys have been following this channel in quite some time. But yeah, we got a lot of good stuff for you, or I got a lot of good stuff for you tonight. Glad that if you're following me or if you haven't followed yet, I would like for you to subscribe to the channel. In tech industry analysis, we're going to be focusing this channel a lot on talking about, as the name says, the tech industry, where it's at now, where it's headed, and ideally we can go over some topics that are relevant to you guys in my audience, so that you have insight as to how you could plan your career, how you could be the most successful, as well as I like to really make creative videos about technology, how we interface with it as humans, the impacts that it has at an existential level. And as well, I like to blend that in with some faith based stuff, as I'm doing my best to be a practicing Christian. Not always successful at that. But all of uh, some of those art pieces, some of those creative pieces will be more on the pre-recorded videos where I edited myself. The streams are going to be a little bit more about on this channel. The streams are going to be more about the topics of the day, insofar as the technology industry. My main inspiration for pivoting the channel towards this is that there's just so much going on right now, and there's not a lot of clarity insofar as what it is, how best to approach the tech industry from a bunch of different angles. I mean, one of the ones that is going to be the most relevant to you guys is going to be the job market, what the job market is like, which I've made videos on this channel before. Uh, but there's a bunch of different facets, like not just what the job market is, but where's the industry going to be in like a few years? Where's it going to be in 10 years down the road? And I think that those kind of topics require attention and something like a stream to be able to really delve deep in, really uh, unpack, because it's not something that I can do in a 5 minute video. It's not something that I could do in a clip. It really, I want to be able to discuss these ideas at length, and really, I'm just the initiative for this message. Ideally, you guys can take this, run with it in the comment section. As we connect, uh, let's make this a conversation about like a community based conversation, just like on X, where everybody pretty much filters out each other's BS. That's the best way that we can find the key information that we'll need as tech professionals to succeed. And I can't do that alone. There's absolutely like no way that I could do that alone. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that successfully is if you come along in that ride to be able to do so. And it's been such a long road just to get to this point, guys. And just so much stuff that I don't know, even with the time of the stream, that I'll be able to cover it. But I'll try to unpack some today toward the end of the stream, so that you guys could get an idea of just what it took to get here, and maybe you can relate to that story, take it as inspiration or not. But uh, ideally, you can relate, even if it's just like on a human level. But the first topic that I wanted to knock out tonight is going to be the corporate job decline. Now, if you've been looking for a job at all within, I don't know, probably within like the last maybe 2.5 to 3 years, you'll notice that, especially if you were in the market prior to that, if you'd been in the job market prior to that, that the job market has become very, very saturated. Like I said, I've made tons and tons of videos on that. Um, but I don't want to beat a dead horse in that regard. And you guys could go on YouTube and look at all the doomer stats and look at all the negativity that's out there. And some of that negativity is based in reality. You know, some of that is true. Like, um, I know I was getting driven by an Uber driver recently, and he was telling me that he was actually out of work as a tech professional, that he'd been out of work for 7 months, and that he had over 12 years of experience. I think he said more, but I'm gonna just say over 12 uh, uh, just to kind of ballpark it in a way that sounds reasonable. Um, and I think it's closer to truth because if I say a bigger number, I might be exaggerating at that point. But I'm certain that he said over 12. So either way, he was an IT professional focusing on cybersecurity. And with that amount of experience, the fact that he'd been out of the market for for a very long time was very, very concerning to me because uh, I've been out in the market recently, and I have also had a bunch of experience, but not like I would say I have above average, but not like 12 years of experience. So the fact that somebody with that much experience was out in the market for 7 months, you start to kind of, as a participant in the market, I started to kind of think that, something really is wrong with this, and for my, for all my first year students who wanted to break into uh, their careers as software engineers, it's also taken one student in particular that I have in mind has taken him a very, very long time uh, to uh, to get his land his first job, and he's been learning to code now for somewhere around 2 years, and has been in the market for about 7 months. So this market, this industry, insofar as technology, and I would say just the corporate market in general, corporate work, white collar work in general, is really taking a decline. And there's so many different ways that you could slice and dice it. But a key thing that I like to say is that, or that I've seen, is that these companies just have tighter budgets. They don't have as much loose money to be spending. So they're naturally just going to be more paranoid about the resources that they're expending. And there's also, I think, something that people don't also want to, I don't think it's acknowledged enough, is that at the end of the day, there is huge incentive to raise your bottom line as a company and to try to eliminate as many inefficiencies as you can to be more profitable. And there's kind of two ways that you could drive value. I mean, there's two ways that you could grow technically money, which is you can drive more value, so more money comes in, or you can just spend less of the money that does come in. And I think that there's a big focus on whatever focus there is on actually like generating value for a company. There's an equivocal, if not more of a focus on just where can we consistently, like where can we find inefficiencies, or where can we declare inefficiencies so that we could cut that and we don't have to have that expense, right? And that, I think, gets that effort of cutting expenses gets multiplied in a difficult economy, because it's not just difficult for the individual, but it's also difficult for the businesses. Um, it doesn't mean that a successful business won't cut. I think actually the drive is so hard. The drive to show more money being made and more money being saved is so hard that even a successful business will drive to get rid of employees, right? And there's also, so that is affecting the market, but there's also now, as time has gone on, I see with someone like the leading adopters, a company like Microsoft, for example, has been leading in the adoption of AI, that they're actively, is a money chase, I guess you could say, that there's a money chase right now toward figuring out how to implement AI to effectively replace knowledge work, right? Regardless of if it's ready today or if it's ready tomorrow, these businesses are actively pushing to eliminate knowledge work. Uh, and that's, knowledge work isn't just coding. Knowledge work is anything that you do behind a computer to get your job done. So that's essentially anybody that works in an office, right? So there really is a driving a driving force to eliminate white collar work. And it's there, so that incentive is there. And the reason why that incentive, I think, is going to persist is because it's a natural incentive for business success, right? If you want to you're always going to think about, how can I do this cheaper, right? And get close, if not the same result, if not better, right? So that's always going to be a key driving element in a business and how a business works. And because that incentive is so natural for a business, once there is a tool that can uh, be more efficient and replace um, uh, and potentially replace somebody's current workload, then there will be drive to get that implemented, right? So I'm saying that because I think the future of corporate work and the future of white collar work in general is in some ways at risk. I don't think that every job is going to be eliminated, but I do think that more and more businesses are going to seek how to minimize the amount of people that are working in their company. Simply put, because they're essentially, if it's not fully implemented correctly, they're at least going to try to really push it to the limits of how much can I squeeze out of the few people that I have, rather than hiring on more people to do a specific task, right? So that's creates a tremendous amount of pressure for the current employees that are in that company, and it also that's trying to implement that, and also creates all the tremendous pressure for people trying to look for a job, because that means that instead of the companies resourcing more jobs for completing these tasks, they're not looking to do that anymore, right? Or at least not on a broad basis. They're not looking to bring in more people. And when they're not looking to bring in more people, that means that there's not going to be really job openings for people that are trying to get in. And that's why you see so many people right now, not just in tech, but in corporate in general, that are getting stonewalled. Or that's one aspect of it, at least, because it's a pretty complex issue. Um, so that is in a lot of ways kind of scary, right? Because people depend on the 9 to 5. I mean, you have a generation, multiple generations of Americans essentially being told that that is the way out. Like that is what is stable in life, is to get a 9 to 5, you know? And I would say as millennials and Zers, already understood that the whole boomer thing of like, hey, like be in a company for 80 years and then like retire. I'm being facetious when I say 80 years, but you get the point. I think that that was already out of the window, but I think we still, in these generations, still, in particular, older millennials still saw corporate as a stepping stone to everything that they're eventually trying to go for, right? And I just don't really see that staying strong. I don't really see that persisting because you essentially are actively consistently you're essentially from a company's perspective, you as an employer are going to be consistently scrutinized and efficiency checked, and there's all the more reason to like there's just so much leverage on that side right now to for companies to efficiency check employees, because there's 1,000 other people that could do that job, right? And not you don't just get the pressure of 1,000 other people trying to do that same job that you have right now, but then you also have the companies, the ones that are smart, trying to activate artificial intelligence agents to be able to do the exact job that you're doing, right? So you're kind of in the crosshairs as a corporate employee, and that's not even getting into like all the office politics stuff. I mean, I'm just saying, like, from a sheer like business perspective, like if a company could get away with getting the similar result, or yeah, getting a similar result or a little bit better without you, they'll probably try. So that's something that is very, very difficult, because what does that mean for us as tech professionals, as people who work in 9 to 5s? That that type of work is not dependable. It's not. I don't, however you want to slice and dice, it's not dependable. It's dependable when you got it, but it's not really, it's not a good foundation for building a future effectively. And I think we've all kind of known this, we all kind of know this to some degree intuitively, but I did just want to highlight it, because I think now more than ever, it's just boiled up to the surface, and people are left without answers. Tech professionals, people who work in corporate in general, are left without answers, especially when you're on the side where you're unemployed, right? So that is a very, very difficult time. It's a very difficult time to be in that regard professionally. Yeah, I splashed some coconut water on this to get them electrolytes. But yeah. So what does the future look like? So let's I wanted to theorize a little bit about like what's what are some solutions that we could create in this situation? So one of the solutions I think really is essentially thinking outside the box. So the way I want to put it like this is a very Western mindset. This is in particular from the United States, is a very American mindset of filling the like the corporate box, like fitting into the corporate box. I even made I made almost a meme video about whether or not humans are designed to actually live in or work in a cubicle, right? But essentially, everything that you've done up until this life, up until this point, if you've lived and gone through the American system, is essentially trained you to be in corporate, right? Like the entire infrastructure of like the classroom, the sitting behind your desk, the staying there, the not moving, not moving until you get your work done. All that is just essentially really just prepping you for doing the same, but replicating it in an office environment. And when we get our degrees and stuff, a lot of times they are essentially done with the intent to be able to land in the specific corporate style environment, right? So it's very ingrained into our cognitive function that in order to be able to make money, you have to abide by the 9 to 5, that 9 to 5 paradigm, that cubicle paradigm. So it's very, very difficult for people to think outside the box. I would say, insofar as my understanding is that that pattern gets ingrained so deeply into us that it's very difficult for us to even think that there is another way to be able to make money, that there are actually alternatives and a possibility to actually be successful outside of that paradigm, right? So what I think that the future of technology professionals, corporate professionals in general, but specifically technology professionals, I think can take advantage of this the most. Whether you're in cybersecurity, you're in development, you're in QA, it really this is a wide spectrum of professionals that I'm speaking to. Is that we can use those same skills that pay us right now in the corporate side and think outside the box and leverage those skills in some way so that we could get paid independently of that 9 to 5 framework. Now that requires sticking yourself out there, getting on a getting on a stream, picking up clients, doing generating building stuff and selling it, advocating for it, being your own business. And that is I made a comment one time as this being a solution a while back, and one guy said something like along the lines of, yeah, like trade the 9 to 5 to work, 24 hours, because when you're building your own business, it takes a lot of effort. And I actually think that that's a pretty good logical point. Like, yeah, you are essentially trading the consistency of, okay, I work at 9 and then I get done at 5, right? Like that kind of pattern is definitely being exchanged for, if you really want to be successful, something that you're essentially going to have to do from the moment that you wake up to the moment that you go to bed. And that's a pretty tough exchange for people because of the workload, right? But I think that decision of starting to make that jump and starting to make those progress in this thinking outside of the box paradigm and being selling your services, for example, being your own business, that kind of stuff is going to since it's going to require a lot of work, it's going to be a personal decision on the individual if that's worth it to them. Is it worth it to put in those hours? Is it worth it to put in that time? For me, as an example, now I don't like to be the center of my examples. If you guys have an example yourself, please leave the comment in the section below, because other people want to hear it. You might not believe it, but I trust me, other people will want to hear it. If you have a similar experience, please share it in the comment section below. So what I was going to say is that in my experience, I'm not really a good fit, for the corporate framework. I mean, I grew up doing art, for gosh sakes, like it's not, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at it. I try to fake that I'm good at it, but I'm not, so it doesn't really work for me. And intuitively, I have a drive where I kind of hate that it all ends at 5, not because of the particular work that I'm doing. I'm glad that's done at 5, but because I have so much more energy to build something, right? And just the fact that corporate is everything, all the energy that you put in there, all the time, the attention, the stress, the sacrifices that you make of not being with your family, all that stuff, at the end of the day, they just can rip that away from your hands at any moment. And all that's it doesn't mean anything, you know? It's not like you can half of the time you can't even take the projects that you built with you. If you're a coder, if you're a developer, they keep the code. It's not like you could put that code on your portfolio. Most of that stuff's proprietary, right? So it's like, what do you really have to show for it at the end of the day, other than like a little like freaking notch on your resume? And you can put that logo on your freaking LinkedIn, right? So like the to me, if I'm gonna end up being putting any effort at all and more effort, I think I'm not saying it's not worthy to put effort with the 905. I mean, Lord knows that working 9 to 5, any work is honorable. Even, I mean, you can be spending your day like going and, picking up trash, and that's honorable, like you could be a server and that's honorable. I'm not saying that the work isn't honorable. Don't get me wrong. That 9 to 5 stuff, if you go in there, if you hustle, you do it right, that's honorable. That's beautiful. Like blessings on you. What I'm saying though is that uh if you want more return for your time and your investment, you build your own thing. You build your own thing, because that although it may that this is the decision that I made, is that if that might take more out of me, but at the end of the day, the returns that I'm going to get on it are just so much more worth it, right? And even if it just means like breaking out of that paradigm so that I could be self-sufficient in everything that I own and everything that I do, um, then to me that seems extremely worth it at this point, and that's why I'm here. That's why I'm streaming, that's why I spend money on all this goofy equipment. It's not goofy, but it's like, if you don't know what it's used for, it could be like, well, it's kind of alien, right? um but either way, so I say all of that to say that jumping out of that 9 to 5 paradigm, it's up to you, And if you have already been caught off guard and you've been laid off, then my hat's off to you, bro. Like, keep going, don't stop. And this is a good time to really take into consideration. I would recommend, like, is this the time to step outside of that box, right? Is this the time to really like to change that direction? And maybe in the future, maybe the next few months will be hard, but maybe in the future, you won't have to go through this drill again, of being laid off, looking for work, nobody like signing up for unemployment, nobody hitting you up, not having enough money for groceries, freaking stressing out because like you want to take a girl on a date, you don't have any money, stressing about your parents stressing you out, like all that stuff. Like, if you don't want to go through that again, then maybe this is the time. Maybe this is the time for you for that change to be made. And on the other side, if you have a job right now, what's to say you're gonna have it tomorrow, right? And I'm not saying that for you to be paranoid. I'm saying that for right now. I think with any transition, the best thing that you could do is to make that transition while you have work. That's the best thing that you can do. It's going to require more of you because you have to work in the day, and then you gotta come home and you gotta do your thing, right? Um, but that's it. I've had both. I've had both experiences in my life: building something when I have work, and building something when I don't have work. And I had to tell you, with my experiences now, and I've done both multiple times, I rather build something when I have work. It's just, even if it's harder, the lack of like the fact that you don't have to worry about the financial stability aspect of what you're trying to do is just such a freaking relief, right? Sometimes you don't have that, so you got to do what you got to do. But and it might take you even a little bit longer to get your little project off the ground. But if you keep going at it, one day, soon enough, that little project won't be so little anymore, and all of a sudden you're getting paid. um, but yeah, so I really think that for the future of survival for us as tech professionals, I especially the market, the way that it currently is, one of the best things that we can really think about and implement is putting our skills to work outside of that 9 to 5 framework. How is that? How do you do that? Well, that's different based on every individual, but my recommendation would be, look at your set of skills that you have. How can you combine those in a distinct way that makes you valuable, right? And if you've had any experience now, especially for like if you're a little bit older, you have some experience, it's a good time to reflect on that. Like, it's like, what can you combine? How can you combine those skills in a way that's valuable and that you can sell to someone? And the scary word there is sell. Like, I have to sell myself. It's tough. Yeah, sure. But I mean, nothing's easy. Really, like literally, like nothing's easy. Nothing that's worthwhile is easy. Um, and yeah, so that's why that's my thing, guys. I think that for us to be successful in this decade, with our skills, we want to think outside the box. How are we thinking outside the box? How's that's getting implemented? That's dependent on every individual, and whether or not that's worth it to you is dependent on you too. But if you take the time, I recommend that if you take the time to do that and really assess what is valuable to you, maybe not in 1 year, but 5 years down the road, 5 to 10 years down the road, that decision, if you adhere to it, will pay off regardless, just because of the time commitment. Um, Anyway, so there's that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is, and if you guys are watching, feel free to hit me up on the chat here. I forgot to mention, y'all. We're not quite at 1,000 subscribers, but once we get to 1,000 subscribers, and I still need a few more hours of watch time on the channel, then we can monetize the channel. And that will help me buy better stuff to make the channel look better for you and sound better for you. But yeah, so it's gonna be my goal with the channel too, is to make it community funded. So the more investment you guys have, not just in your money, but in like liking, subscribing, commenting, the bigger the channel gets, but also just like the more we grow as a community, the more resources I could provide for you guys. And that's really the goal. Is like, it's not really so much just a channel anymore. It's really for me, the goal is to get a community so that you guys don't feel like you're just like out in a boat in the internet, so that this is a boat for you to come and hang out and talk and feel heard. Feel heard. I mean, even saying the word feel, this is kind of weird, but the key thing is that it's a resource for you, right, that you can use and leverage to your benefit. Anyway, so let's get to 1,000 subscribers. That's why I'm saying that. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Okay. So the other topic that I had was Apple's lack of innovation, and then we'll finish up with just a catch up on what's been going on with me. So Apple's lack of innovation. So I recently listened to a biography by Steve Jobs, and it occurred to me that that dude was really holding it down for Apple. He was so anal about the design of everything. So it wasn't just about how things function, which is something that, like, for example, like Microsoft is very good at with Windows. It's about that functionality, and it was an open system, right? So you can mod your PCs and whatnot. And Apple, it's very closed, right? You can't mod your Apple stuff. I mean, you can if you really, really wanted to, but most people don't because it's very hard, right? And everything about them is closed, right? Like, even if you think about like the iPhone, when you're texting people, who has an iPhone and who doesn't, right? So even like the psychology of Apple as a system is enclosed, right? It defines a community of people, and I think that no, I know now that is all extremely, extremely intentional, literally from the mind of Steve Jobs. Like, that dude really had that intent with everything that he made. And the thing is that he wasn't so much of an engineer as much as he was a designer. Now, if any of you guys have designed before, if any of you guys have done anything, like, especially for my designers, but like graphic design, UI design, UX design, if any of you guys have done stuff like that, then how OCD you can get about like lines. Like, this thing can't be crooked, it has to be like just right. And it's just like, you might make something that looks good to like the 100 people behind you, but if it doesn't look good to you, you don't care. That thing needs to get worked until it's perfect for you in your eyes, right? So that is a very difficult thing for a designer to live through, because it is, I think, some form of OCD, perhaps. But the way he developed Apple is that he approached it from that lens, right? It wasn't that he wanted to build the best open computer so you could do all these mods. That was like more like Steve Wozniak's idea. He is more of, hey, look, I'm going to build this experience for the user. I'm going to design this experience for the user. And I think that we might do it nowadays in, like, for example, in Figma, right? We might experience that in Figma when we're doing a mock-up for a mobile web application or a desktop web application. But this dude was doing it for hardware. uh, they were saying in the biography, they were talking about, like, when he got fired from Apple, he went on to build Next, right? And if you guys look at those Next computers for their time, those are really sick looking computers, right? And the thing is that they didn't sell very well, but he was so intent about how it is that he wants things designed that he didn't just stop at the hardware that they were developing, but he also, like, in the factories of where the machines were developed, they had to have, even the factories in and of themselves, a certain aesthetic to them, and they had to be squeaky freaking clean. There's notes of him being very anal about the factory not being clean, and there was a lot of how should I say this, like, Japanese cultural principles that he applied to the way that he built things. And one of the key things in particular with the factory for the next machine was that it looked good. It had to look good to him. This also laid out with how he bought furniture. They said in the biography, he talked about how, like, he was very picky about the furniture that he bought, because anything that he bought, he had to essentially like it every time that he looked at it. He had to be able to admire it every time that he looked at it, right? So there's so much intent behind what I'm saying is that he had this kind of mind where there was so much intent behind the products that were put out by his company, right? It was an experience that he was trying to give you. Every meticulous detail was laid out. I think it was for the Apple II? I think it was for the Apple II, where before the Apple II was developed, one of their software developers created a calculator app, right? And the dude was super, super meticulous just on the aesthetic of the calculator app. The engineer would continue to present the calculator app to Steve Jobs, and he would say, "No, I don't like this, change that. I don't like this, change that." And eventually, that iterative process got so worn out that the engineer just developed essentially a control panel where Steve Jobs himself could modify the look of the calculator. And it wasn't until he himself put the touch on the aesthetic of that calculator that that he finally said, "Okay, this is good now," right? So he was always trying to push a finality with the things that he was building. It had to have a certain aesthetic. It had to feel a certain way. It had to touch a certain way. I had to feel like it was all immersive. That is why it's a closed system. It's because he was trying to present the user with a tailored, catered experience for them, right? And that's why people love those machines. That's why people love these machines to this day, right? But the thing is that in doing that, he essentially innovated, right? And he says something along the lines is that along the lines is that of that if you dare to try, you can actually, like, if you actually go into space and you try to push something, you can affect reality, right? So you could literally impact the world in which you live in if you so far as just give a shit, right? Give a crap about it, right? And do it. So the whole thing with that is that he was uh so what I'm talking about, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys. He's building an experience, changing, impacting. Oh yeah, so he was driving to make an impact, to splash with his work, right? Really like an artist in a lot of ways, but a designer, because there's like almost like a mechanical aspect to what he was doing, or there was a mechanical aspect to what he was doing. So really unique blend between like engineering and art and design. Either way, so I would say that because because he wanted to push the envelope that led to innovation, and in that innovation we got some revolutionary products, right? We have the MacBooks that we use today. We have the most prevalent one is the iPhone, right? We have the iPhone, and think about what the iPhone is. It is literally the embodiment of that changing reality by taking action, right? Steve Jobs releases the first iPhone, and then iterations of that same technology have essentially changed the world. And I mean, insofar as in specific here in the United States, it changed the United States because it was massively adopted. And through that gateway of the phone came everything else that changed reality to the way that it is today, right? Because we think about YouTube, we think about Facebook, we think about Snapchat, we think about TikTok. TikTok might be getting banned, y'all. Just kidding. Side note. What I was going to say, all the things that changed today really came from that portable device in effect, right? And it led to everything. I mean, it led to the results of the election, the changing of the media landscape. It led to the development of social media. It led to how we date, how we exchange money. All of it is powered through the phone. You can literally control devices across your home from literally your phone. You can navigate anywhere through your phone, and you need it. You depend on it. If and you don't believe me, ask somebody, do this. Here's an experiment. Ask somebody, hey, can I borrow your phone for something? And they'll usually say yeah, but then just count how long it takes for them to ask for their phone back. Do it. I recommend you guys do it because you can see the anxiety coming over them from the fact that somebody else is holding on to their beautiful precious. It is like freaking crazy, right? So either way, what I'm saying is that this dude innovated, changed reality, and it was so impactful that it produced a wave across how we behave as humans to this day. And to this day, we're kind of dealing with the aftershock of that, right? So very, very interesting. Now, this along this path made Apple very, very successful, right? Because people love that. People were so attracted to this impactful change, the devices that drove it, and the culture and the aesthetic of it, right? The brand, if you will. And people were driven by that. Now, the argument I'm making here is that after Steve Jobs passed away, gradually Apple has really only when did I don't know when Steve chat if you guys can help. I don't know when Steve Jobs passed away. Passed away. Yeah, so he passed away in 2011. So I'm making the argument that essentially he passed away, and then Apple has just been riding all of the things that he innovated essentially for the past 13 years. Because if you think about it, from 2011 on, how much has your iPhone really changed, right? How much has your iPhone really changed? And I would argue that if you do take a moment to think about it, that you realize, holy my iPhone really hasn't changed that much, right? Maybe they added a different camera. Maybe they changed the size of the phone a little bit, right? Little tweak here, little tweak there. But as a whole, the iPhone is essentially the same, right? Your Macs too. And I know there's spec geeks in the audience, and I completely and totally understand that. But we have to remember when we're talking about Apple, we're not talking about PCs. People who buy these products, who buy Apple products, they don't want to think really about what's underneath the hood. So like I'm not saying that there's not spec geeks on these like on the Unix system like Apple, but I would say that the majority of people are not really going to care about the specs. They just want a good driving experience, right? And because of that, you might get these little tweaks here, oh, a little spec here, a little spec here. Oh, we're gonna change the chip. We're going M1, M2, stuff like that. But really, 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 your mom and pop don't give a about those little spec tweaks, right? They're just kind of like Apple's just been riding on. What I'm saying is that Apple's just been riding off of the innovations that have already occurred, right? And just being like, all right, we're just gonna drive. If it works, don't fix it. I get that. But I think that because of that, they're at some point they're at some point going to lose the mystique if they don't persist on providing the next best thing, right? And you could kind of get away with like feeding the fishies. with the little changes, tweaks here and there, boom, 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 boom. But eventually, the chicken's going to come home to roost, and they're just not going to cut it anymore, right? And I'll put it like this. So iOS 18, if I'm not mistaken, with the new Apple, with the new iPhone, was projected to be the release that is finally implementing artificial intelligence. And I recommend doing this. Go on Twitter, go on X, and look at just type in iOS 18 and look at how many people are complaining about that update, that software update. It's crazy. A lot of people are complaining about it. And that's not characteristic of Apple. It's not characteristic of them to release something that sucks, right? And the thing is that if Steve Jobs were around today, God rest his soul, he wouldn't have let that go. He wouldn't have let them release that software. Not until it was up to his specifications, right? And think about the huge misfire with the Apple Vision Pro, because you'd say, well, they haven't innovated in a while, but look at the Apple Vision Pro, right? But the price point was too high. It was so high in a time where nobody has any money that it was just like unaccessible, and let alone the zeitgeist of the culture is just not into VR like that. It's not, maybe it'll be like VR will be mixed in, or augmented reality will be mixed in with these other technologies, but in and of itself, like, people are not waking up and being like, man, I can't wait. Shout out to one of the YouTuber, what is it? Eli the computer guy. He said this one time, which I thought was very poignant. He goes, it's like, what, like, why would you pay $3,000 for this? Right? Well, like this thing is already like super intrusive in your life. Most of us have pretty terrible relationships with our phone. Like, why would we just want to approximate the phone centimeters from our eyeballs? And I'm sure the experience on the Apple Vision Pro is just like, it's pretty good. But what I'm saying is that was a misfire. You don't really, like, people don't really gravitate towards that stuff. And knowing Apple, they probably were developing that for years. It wasn't like a day and night thing, and they released it and it flopped, right? So I'm not saying that they haven't. I mean, Steve Jobs has been there before, and they've released stuff that has flopped, and he invented things, or he helped design things that and push things through that had flopped before, right? But it really does not have some of the members from the All In podcast said this, which I agree. It doesn't have the same taste that it used to. So I think that this is going to be very interesting to see how this plays out for Apple, because if they're not really if people are going to start losing faith in them being able to really provide the quality of product that they have provided before, it's going to be very interesting with the adoption of AI, like because the whole thing with iOS 18, I think, was a huge misfire, because it really, to me, showed that they were behind the ball on the whole AI thing. And they really, like, all these companies, like, everybody's searching for the next Chat GPT moment with AI, and it just, regardless of how much it's improved, all these changes, and I'm sure they're pushing very, very hard, but a lot of these companies, including Apple, has not been able to achieve it. So I just think it's been a misstep on their side, and my guess is it could also be that when the work for iOS 18 wasn't natively built to handle AI optimally, right? That could be another thing. There could be a bunch of patchwork that's behind that, and that's also why, like, the performance of it sucks, why the user experience of it sucks. Either way, I'll tell you what, as a consumer, I have not wanted to update since the 12X. I have the 12X Pro Max, whatever, like the 12 Pro Max. But it's the same thing, I look at other people's phones. I'm like, that looks like pretty much like what my phone could do. Just like the squares are a little bit different, and you could change like the color on like your widgets. It's like, cool. I think Android had that like 7 years ago. Like, it's it's like nothing is like there's not like that next big thing. Like that next big thing hasn't hit, and it just hasn't swept the culture the same way. And that was like one of the really unique things about Steve Jobs, is that he swept the culture. He made those things a moment. Like, look at his presentations. Like, he made them a moment. And it's not the reason why I'm saying it's not because, like, Steve Jobs, He's just a man. He's just a human being with tons of flaws. What I'm saying is that like his intent was to drive that presentation to make a spectacle of the things that they were developing and of the things that they were building. And when that's not there, I mean, you just have a company that's riding off of the successes of like last decade, right? So it's gonna, in my opinion, it's gonna be very interesting to see, because I think for the first time ever, we're starting to see kind of a wane in just an interest in that technology. Will they be fine in the long run? I think so. I think so. I think that the company's just so huge. It's not like it's going to be done like tomorrow. And they're going to make huge pushes in AI and stuff. And I think in the long run they'll be fine. But it might not have that taste no more. It might not have that Steve Jobs taste. And that matters, because at the end of the day, you and me, we're the people that are consuming those products. We're the people that like those products, right? But either way, so I think 2011, I think. Yep. Shout out AMX02. Dang, that profile image is sick. And I feel like I've seen it somewhere before. But yeah, so I really think that there's a lot to see this decade. We'll probably end up doing an episode on just talking about who the big players in AI are, and how they're moving, and what kind of the expectation is for them in this decade, stuff like that. But either way, if you guys haven't subscribed already, please make sure to subscribe. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we'll be able to monetize the channel, which will be super, super, super sick. So please support. Please watch these streams from now on. When you show up, do your best to. My recommendation would be for you to watch the stream from beginning to end. Play it while you're cooking. Play it while you're at the gym. My goal is to provide you with good information so that you leave these streams feeling refreshed, more intelligent, and better suited to be able to take on your tasks as a tech professional. So yeah, make sure to subscribe, comment. As of course, don't let this just be a one-way conversation. We want to hear, not just me, but the community, the people that watch these videos. They want to hear what you have to say. And your voice is important. And I need it. We need it as a community, for you to put in your input, because that's the only way that we're going to win, is if we share this information, share notes, get better at understanding the industry. And that's how we dominate, right? We funnel in all that information, and then we use what is used. We grab what is useful to us, implement that, and then make some money. So either way, that was it, guys. I haven't established a cadence yet on the streams for like what days I'll be doing them. But look forward to them. There will be more coming. So that was it. I will see you guys soon. I hope you have a good day, and I hope you have a wonderful day as well. AMX02, sweet dreams, and thank you for showing up, bro. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe already, and we will catch you next time, hopefully. All right, guys, have a good night. Peace.